Perhaps no aspect of Culver's legacy is better known around the world than the participation in U.S. presidential inaugural parades of the Black Horse Troop and equestrians. Most who are familiar with Culver know that its inaugural legacy began in 1913 when Indiana Governor turned Vice President Thomas Marshall invited the entire Corps of Cadets to be his escort at the inauguration of President Woodrow Wilson, a journey the Corps made again in 1917. Culver did not return formally to an inaugural parade again until 1957, but by no means were the troopers and their mounts idle during the intervening years. In fact, the troop escorted a host of dignitaries before 1913 and after 1957 as well. The Black Horse Troop actually owes its origins to participation in a presidential inaugural of a different era. In March 1897, the 1st Cleveland Cavalry Troop A marched in President Kennedy's inaugural parade. Their appearance made enough of an impact that composing legend John Philip Sousa composed the Black Horse Troop March in honor of the unit. At Culver, then Commandant of Cadets Lee Genillette, a new hire recently graduated from Virginia Military Institute, immediately recognized the PR possibilities and was given permission to purchase what eventually became 32 mounts. Starting in May of that year, the newly formed Culver Black Horse Troop served as military escort to Governor Mount in 3 different events in Chicago and Indiana over the next 3 years. In the early 1900s, troopers garnered headlines escorting George Dewey, the only person in U.S. history to attain the rank of Admiral of the Navy, in St. Louis and marched at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904. After escorting Marshall in the 1913 and 1917 inaugural parades, Culver again made waves when it escorted Marshal Foch, Commander-in-Chief of the Allied Armies of World War I, in Indianapolis in 1921. 8 years later, Culver cadets served as a special escort to a delegation of World War I dignitaries from Argus to Culver, and the same year took part in celebrating the anniversary of Revolutionary War hero General Pulaski in Gary, Indiana. Perhaps most notably during this period, the Black Horse Troop carried on its presidential legacy, even if not in an inaugural, when troopers escorted President Herbert Hoover in Indianapolis in 1932. It seemed the eyes of what felt like half the world were on the troop again in 1933, when Culver featured prominently in the opening ceremonies of the Century of Progress Exposition in Chicago. Of course, by January 1957, the troop was back on Pennsylvania Avenue for the inaugural of President Eisenhower, marking a nearly unbroken line of inaugural appearances lasting to this day. In the meantime, however, troopers kept busy escorting an array of dignitaries. Queen Elizabeth escorted by the Lancer Platoon in 1958, the King and Queen of Denmark in 1960, the American Royal Stock Show in Kansas City in 1961, not to mention the John F. Kennedy inaugural earlier the same year. The Indianapolis 500 Parade in 1962 was the first of several appearances there. Inaugural participation in 1965 and 1969, besides appearances in the Chicago Christmas Parade and the Indianapolis 500 Festival Parade, also in 1969. From 1970 into the 1980s, the Lancer Platoon was busy at a host of horse shows, such as the Dallas, Texas Charity Horse Show, the Tuscaloosa, Alabama Heritage Horse Show, the Fort Worth Fat Stock Show and Rodeo, to which they returned in 1998 and 2016, and the Washington, D.C. International Horse Show. The Lancers also had the opportunity of escorting Japanese Emperor Hirohito in Chicago in 1975. In 1986, members of the Lancers escorted His Royal Highness Prince Charles during a polo match at Oak Brook, Illinois. The Black Horse Troupe made a number of appearances during this area as well, including the Cotton Bowl Parade in Dallas and the World 3-Day Event Championships in Kentucky. The Equestrians, first formed in 1978, were made a Culver Girls Academy Honor Organization in 1981. The same year they made their public debut at the first of several Culver Polo benefits in Chicago. In 1992, the Equestrians joined the troupe at the All-American Quarter Horse Congress, the world's largest horse show in Ohio. In the decades to follow, the unit performed at a host of parades and events, including at several Indianapolis 500 festival parades, the Kentucky Derby Pegasus Parade in 2008, and the Holland Tulip Festival. The Equestrians won top awards, including several placing first in competitive parades and events such as the Midwest Horse Fair Drill Competition and the Bluegrass Blast Competition in Lexington, Kentucky. And the CGA unit wowed international audiences at the World Equestrian Games in Lexington in 2010. And so, 120 years after Culver's first equestrian unit was founded, the collaboration between the Black Horse Troupe and equestrians on the national and world stage, not only at presidential inaugurals, but in a variety of contexts, only reinforces the lasting legacy of Culver's traditions of honor and leadership.